57,000 people live here. Greenland, the world's largest island. 2 days ago, the President of the United States said he's taking it. Quote, whether they like it or not. Denmark, the country that owns Greenland and America's NATO ally for 75 years, responded with a warning. If you do this, NATO ends. The most powerful military alliance in history, over. This isn't a joke. This isn't campaign rhetoric. After what happened in Venezuela, everyone is taking this very seriously. January 4th, 2026. 2 a.m. American Special Forces helicopters descend on the presidential palace in Caracas, Venezuela. Within 2 hours, President Nicolas Maduro and his wife are in American custody on a Navy ship headed to New York. No warning, no declaration of war, just a surgical raid that removed a foreign head of state. The Trump administration says it was a law enforcement operation, serving an arrest warrant on a drug trafficker who happened to be president. But 2 days later, Trump made it clear what it really was.
Well, I'd have to ask the military. We need Greenland from a national security situation. It's so strategic. Right now, Greenland is covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security. And Denmark is not going to be able to do it, I can tell you.
In the same breath, Venezuela and Greenland. And suddenly everyone understood. Venezuela wasn't a one-off. It was a demonstration. The United States has tried to buy Greenland 3 times before. 1867, 1910, 1946. Every time, they offered money. Every time, Denmark said no. Every time, America accepted that answer. But offering money implies Denmark has the right to say no. It acknowledges their sovereignty. This time, there's no offer. There's a demand.
We need it for national security. We have to have it. And he wanted to lead the charge, so we're making him, Marco, today, a special envoy to Greenland. Greenland's a big deal.
And when reporters asked the White House, will you rule out military force?
Why not rule out taking it by military force?
All options are always on the table for President Trump as he examines what's in the best interests of the United States. But I will just say that the president's first option always has been diplomacy.
All options on the table. That's diplomatic speak for, we might invade you. Here's why. This time is different from 1867, 1910, and 1946. Trump just proved he's willing to use military force to achieve his objectives in the Western Hemisphere. Venezuela was the proof of concept. And there's something else. The Trump administration has given this policy a name, the Donroe Doctrine. It's based on the Monroe Doctrine from 1823, the idea that European powers should stay out of the Americas. But Trump has expanded it dramatically. According to the National Security Strategy, released in December 2025, the Western Hemisphere now includes everything from Alaska through the Arctic and Greenland down to Antarctica. And within this zone, American dominance must be absolute, not negotiated, not shared, absolute. Trump calls it the Donroe Doctrine, Donald plus Monroe. Everyone else is calling it what it is, a declaration that might makes right. So that's why this time is different. Past presidents asked, Trump is demanding, and he just showed in Venezuela that he's willing to act.
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran.
Which brings us to the obvious question. Why does he want it so badly? Reason one, geography. Look at a map from above the North Pole. Greenland sits right in the middle, between North America and Europe. But more importantly, it sits directly under the flight path Russian nuclear missiles would take to hit the US East Coast. Which is why the United States built this 70 years ago. Pawtucket Space Base, 750 miles north of the Arctic Circle, the northernmost American military installation on Earth. From here, the US operates the solid-state phased array radar, the system that would detect Russian ICBMs the moment they launch. This base is part of America's early warning network. If Russia ever launched a nuclear first strike, this radar would give the president those crucial 30 minutes of warning. The Trump administration argues that just having access to this base isn't enough anymore. They want ownership, complete control. There's also the GIUK Gap, Greenland, Iceland, United Kingdom. It's the only route Russian submarines can take to reach the Atlantic without being detected. For 75 years, NATO has monitored this choke point. Greenland is the Western anchor. So that's the military argument. But there's a second reason, and it's about what's under the ice. Reason two, rare earth elements. These are rare earth elements. You've never heard of them, but they're in your phone, your laptop, electric car batteries, wind turbines, and fighter jets. The entire modern economy runs on rare earths. Problem: China controls 70% of global reserves and almost all the processing. If China decided tomorrow to stop selling rare earths to the United States, huge parts of the economy and military would grind to a halt. Greenland has massive deposits, especially one called Tarnbreeze, high concentration of the most valuable heavy rare earths. Low radioactivity, and as of 2024, owned by an American company. Perfect, except it's on Danish territory.
It's underexplored, so in the other countries there's been more extensive exploration, and because they also have better infrastructure, and so the resources have been found and they've been developed and they're more mining, while Greenland has been sort of sheltered and remains unexplored. But the geology is favorable. Just need to have, the will and the capacity or the motivation to go and actually do the finding and development.
And reason three, the future. Climate change is melting Arctic ice fast. New shipping routes are opening, routes that could cut weeks off trips between Asia and Europe. Whoever controls Greenland controls access to those routes. So nuclear missile defense, critical minerals, future shipping lanes. That's why Trump wants Greenland. But here's the thing, America already has access to all of this. The 1951 Defense of Greenland Agreement gives the US military access. They can build bases, operate radar, station troops. Denmark has never refused American security requests. In fact, last June, Denmark's parliament passed a law allowing even more US military presence on Danish soil. So if America already has what it needs, why does Trump want ownership?
Please, go ahead, ma'am.
Mr. President, why is it so important to you to own it when you have a military presence there, which you could expand to affect the security?
Because when we own it, we defend it. You don't defend leases the same way. You have to own it. And, you know, with a nation, look at what happened with Obama, with that horrible deal they made with Iran. It was a short-term deal. It was like a 9-year deal. Countries can't make 9-year deals or even 100-year deals. Countries have to have ownership. And you defend ownership, you don't defend leases.
And that brings us to the crisis, because Greenland already has an owner. NATO, 32 countries, one promise. An attack on one is an attack on all. That promise, Article 5, has kept the peace in Europe for 75 years. It's only been invoked once, after 9/11, when America was attacked, and every NATO member responded. But Article 5 was designed for external threats. Russia invading, terrorists attacking. It assumes NATO members defend each other. It never imagined one member threatening another. Here's the problem. Greenland is part of Denmark. Denmark is a NATO member. If the United States takes military action against Greenland, even limited action, that's one NATO member attacking another. And if that happens, NATO experts say the alliance effectively ends.
It's not likely that this would escalate to a point where many lives are lost. But the danger is to the erosion of the rule of law globally and to the perception that there are any norms protecting anybody on the planet. So I think, unfortunately, the administration seems to want people to perceive that there are fewer norms and there's a less robust system of justice.
Think about what that means. Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, they're on Russia's border. The only thing protecting them from Russian pressure is Article 5. The promise that if Russia attacks, America will defend them. But if America just proved that Article 5 doesn't apply when it's inconvenient, why would Russia believe it applies to defend the Baltics? The entire foundation of European security collapses.
Firstly, I believe that the U.S. president should be taken seriously when he says that he wants Greenland. But I also want to make it clear that if the United States chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops. That is, including our NATO, and thus the security that has been provided since the end of the Second World War.
Everything stops. The end of NATO. The end of the security system that prevented World War III. But here's the impossible position Europe is in.
From a security perspective, Europe today depends almost 100% on the United States for military and technological capabilities, from aircraft and tanks to satellites and intelligence systems. If the United States decided to withdraw support, Europe would, in terms of security, be effectively deaf, blind, and mute. Therefore, I believe the Greenland issue may prompt Europeans to reassess this dependence.
Europe is completely dependent on the United States. American satellites provide intelligence. American aircraft provide air superiority. American nuclear weapons provide deterrence. So Europe wants to defend Denmark. They want to say that sovereignty matters, that you can't just take an ally's territory, but they also desperately need the United States. They're trying to thread an impossible needle, stand up for principles while not actually risking the relationship they depend on for survival. On January 6th, 7 European leaders, France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, UK, and Denmark, issued a joint statement, quote, "Greenland belongs to its people. It is for Denmark and Greenland, and them only, to decide." Strong words. But notice what's missing. No consequences. No threat of what happens if the US ignores this.
Thank you very much, everybody. Well,
Because what can they actually do?
very much.
So, this is a vast subject, and frankly, it might seem completely naive and ironic to tell you that we're going to address international governance at a time when I'm telling you that there's utter chaos. The law of the strongest prevails, and every day people wonder if Greenland will be invaded, if Canada will be threatened with becoming the 51st state of the United States, or if Taiwan will be further encircled.
The law of the strongest. That's what Macron called it. And he's right. If the United States decides to take Greenland, whether through economic pressure, gradual military expansion, or direct action, Europe probably won't stop them. They'll condemn it, they'll issue statements, they'll be furious. But will they actually fight American forces to defend Greenland? Will they impose sanctions on the United States? Will they kick America out of NATO? No, because they can't afford to. Which means Trump is probably right when his advisors say,
and what I hear them say is they always make an argument about the past. They'll say, well, we fought together in World War II, or we fought together in the war on terrorism, and we're grateful for that. We love having these allies, but just because you did something smart 25 years ago doesn't mean you can't do something dumb now. And the President of the United States is saying very clearly, you are not doing a good job with respect to Greenland. We're going to make sure we defend America's interests, and I think the President's willing to go as far as he has to make sure he does that.
and that's the NATO crisis. Not whether the alliance will formally end, but whether the promise at its core that allies defend each other means anything at all. If the United States can take territory from an ally and face no real consequences, then what is NATO actually defending? Let's come back to the people who didn't ask for any of this. 57,000 Greenlanders. They have their own language, their own parliament, their own culture. They're not threatening anyone, they're just trying to live their lives. And right now, they're watching the world's most powerful country decide their future without asking them.
I think we're not a business, we're a people. We're a people with our own country and culture, language. We are not a product. So I think people should really think about that. I know Donald Trump is a businessman, but Greenland is not a product. We're a people, and that should be taken very seriously, and that should be respected.
We're a people, not a product. But here's the brutal economic reality. Greenland gets $620 million a year from Denmark, half their government budget. Without that money, independence isn't viable. So reports suggest the Trump administration has discussed this. Offer every Greenlandic citizen $100,000 to vote for independence and alignment with America. 57,000 people times $100,000 equals $5.7 billion total. That's less than the cost of 2 stealth bombers. For Greenlanders, it would be life-changing money. For the United States, it's nothing. Is that a free choice, or is that coercion? But this isn't really about Greenland. It's about what comes next. If the United States can threaten to take Greenland from an ally, what stops China from using the same logic for Taiwan? China says Taiwan is historically Chinese territory. It has critical semiconductor manufacturing. It sits on crucial shipping lanes. By what principle does America get to take Greenland, but China doesn't get to take Taiwan? The answer used to be international law prohibits changing borders by force. and everyone agreed to that rule. But when President Trump was asked if his administration needs to follow international law, he said, quote, "It depends what your definition of international law is." It depends on your definition. That's not a rejection of one specific treaty. That's a rejection of the entire concept that rules apply equally to everyone. And if the most powerful country says rules don't apply to them, then there are no rules, just power.
The U.S. position completely violates international law and fundamentally contradicts the norms of international relations established after World War II. In essence, the U.S. stance is a blatant threat of force. What I see in this is nothing but a gangster logic.
Gangster logic, from a European legal expert describing American policy. This is the real crisis, not just whether America takes Greenland, but what it means for every other dispute in the world. Are we living in a world of sovereign nations with equal rights? Or are we back to a world of empires and spheres of influence where the strong do what they want and the weak suffer what they must? So here's where we are. The United States wants Greenland for military bases, rare earth minerals, and control of future Arctic shipping. They already have access to everything they need, but Trump wants ownership. Denmark says absolutely not, but they can't actually stop the United States without help. Europe says Greenland belongs to its people, but Europe depends on America for security and won't risk that relationship. NATO faces an existential crisis it was never designed for. What happens when one member threatens another? And the rest of the world watches to see if international law and sovereignty still mean anything, or if we're returning to an era where power is the only thing that matters. Secretary of State Rubio says he'll meet with Danish officials soon. Those negotiations will determine Greenland's future. But they'll also determine something much bigger: whether the rules that have governed the world for 75 years still apply. Or whether we're in a new era where might makes right. 57,000 people, and a question that will define the 21st century. Do the rules still matter? That's the Greenland crisis in simple terms.